Welcome back. We welcome you back to Hafeman Brothers Talking Packers. It's been a little while. It's the off season. There are crazy things going on in the world that everyone's dealing with. And our job at Hafeman Brothers, although we don't get paid, is to take you away from that a little bit. And that's what we're hoping this episode will do for you. There are some things happening in the world of the Green Bay Packers, so Ben and I are back to talk about it. Ben, the Packers are getting some things done in free agency. We're seeing some things taking shape. Departure of some longtime players, some new guys coming in via free agency to obviously fill some holes. And then that also gives us an idea of where the draft, where they might try to go in the draft. So I'll welcome Ben in. Ben, how are things going in Minnesota?
Well, it's one of those weird things. I am stuck in the house doing the quarantine thing, I guess, is what they say to do.
It's a good idea at this
Mostly
point.
because both of my employees, I work at two different places, and both of them are places that, like, nobody wants to go to at this point. Because one of them is, like, a place where a bunch of people meet, and another one is a place that sells things that people don't necessarily need. My wife is jealous because she has to work from home, but I get to just kind of hang out and do nothing.
Well, you're making the best of it, and that's good. That's good. The Packers, though, okay, so we were kind of wondering, right, when we taught you and I went through everything, went through all those unrestricted free agents, the restricted free agent guys, and then, thought about what the Packers might do, and there was all these questions, everybody leading up to this. How many times do you hear all these guys in other podcasts talk about Brian Bulaga being the top priority and blah, 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 and all this stuff, and reports were that the Packers didn't even make an offer to Bulaga or really reach out to his camp. So it was clear that they were moving on. Right. We both said, no, just let him go, right? I mean,
that's right.
He's fine. He was a serviceable right tackle, but he was injured often, never lived up to that first-round billing, and was going to be too expensive. So that's what just happened. Brian Bulaga just signed with the Los Angeles Chargers, and for a good amount of money, much more than the Packers wanted to pay him. So Brian Bulaga is no longer a Packer. What say you?
I'm excited. That's what we wanted, right?
Exactly.
And that's what I wanted.
Instead, though, what is likely is that the Packers will now have a former Badger starting at right tackle in one of their very inexpensive free agent signings, named Rick Wagner. So the former Badger who was drafted by the Baltimore Ravens, and there's going to be a little theme here coming in with some players connected to the Ravens originally, and then also then signed a pretty lucrative contract with the Lions, was a solid starter for them for a few years, and then ran some injuries and some things here lately, and then that's the reason why they cut ties with him, because he was very expensive under that old contract. So the Lions' loss becomes the Packers' gain if Rick Wagner can kind of get back into form and bounce back from last year. So either way, he's very inexpensive and could work out to be a really good right tackle and a solid right tackle to fill that hole. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah, me too. It's one of those things where it sounds as if they're not going to go back and try to get Valdir to come back, from what I hear from different sources, saying that he's one of those guys where, he when he came in and played for a couple games, he played great. But he's but they don't think he could like sustain an entire career as like the starter for a whole season. You know what I mean? So this Wagner is the guy who I think is going to be, if they don't draft a guy, I think it'd be fine. You know what I mean? He's good to put there. The problem is, as you know, is the Billy Turner problem. What is he enough to help, Billy Turner and the new guy on the outside there? Are they going to be able to hold their own over on that side of the line? I don't know. But we'll see what happens there. I don't know. The other thing is they have not. A lot of people were saying, they're going to cut Lane Taylor. They're going to cut Lane Taylor. As far as I know, they haven't cut Lane Taylor yet, right?
Not yet, no.
Am I correct on that? Okay.
Yes.
So there is a chance that Lane Taylor could be in the mix to start at one of the two guard positions yet. I mean, he was a good player. He just got hurt last year. Yeah, he wasn't as great as he was in the past, but he's a darn good starter. Better than average, if you ask me, and way better than Billy Turner, if you ask me. So I could easily see them either moving Jenkins over to right guard and then bring Lane Taylor back up since he's still under contract, if they don't draft somebody or whatever it is. But I think we're all in agreement. Billy Turner's got to be out the door, or just be there but not starting because he's just bad.
He has to be better. I mean, the fallback.
I don't know if
the fallback there is they did sign last year. They signed Lucas Patrick to an extension, and he is a guy that can plug in those interior positions, and he could be a starter at right guard. I mean, he totally could, and he would be just fine. He would be kind of like when Lane Taylor got plugged in at left guard and was very solid for a few years. I could see Lucas Patrick doing that very well. So I think because of the money and the investment and everything else they put into Billy Turner, they're obviously going to keep him on the roster, but they also want to try to make him the starter still. But I think this camp, there's going to be a lot more competition. When they look at the tape from last year of Turner, I think they're going to want to really give Lucas Patrick a good look and opportunities to take that right guard spot and push him and see if maybe that can help him get the most out of Billy Turner signing. But before that's a whole separate thing. I want to dig in a little bit and really get to know these free agents or these new Packers now a little bit better. And Rick Wagner is one. Here's some of the cool things, okay, about Rick Wagner. He did he grew up in Wisconsin. He went to West Allis High School, out of West Allis, Wisconsin, and he was originally a tight end in his high school days, but then walked on at Wisconsin, and after redshirting. He then became a Badger starter and started for a long time. Then he was actually in the same draft class as David Bakhtiari. Did you know that? So it's kind of a cool tie-in. The other thing is he is 30 years old. Brian Bulaga is also 30 years old. So you're not getting an older player here. You're getting the same age player, a guy that's got a little bit less wear and tear on him and hasn't had as many injury problems over his career. And he's substantially cheaper than Bulaga, half the cost, and actually his base salary, when you take out some of the attainable incentives and stuff like that, and roster bonuses and things like that, is very inexpensive. So you've got a solid, established right tackle that you can plug in, and it gives the Packers an opportunity then to look at the draft to see if they can find that next guy that in a few years down the road could then be the new tackle. So I really love this signing. On top of the fact, the guy played in Wisconsin weather his whole life prior to the NFL. So there's something to be said about that, and especially on the offensive line and defensive line, I think. So I love this signing. I love it. I love it. I love it. You got a former Badger, which we like that. We got a guy that's been a good starter who was very good for the Ravens. And again, the other tie-in with Milt Hendrickson now being in the Packers front office and part of their football team. He was with the Ravens organization when a lot of these guys were drafted by the Ravens. So you would assume that he also knows more about these players, and that's one of the reasons, and there's some influence there. I mean, you look at Zadarius Smith, you look at now Rick Wagner, there's other guys that they're talking about potentially that might be good fits for the Packers, including another inside linebacker that they could get for a good price, who was drafted in his first 4 years in the league were with the Ravens. So, hey, the Ravens have had a pretty good track record of drafting good players. I mean, they haven't had a good quarterback forever, right? Until now they've got this crazy athlete at quarterback, Lamar Jackson. But up until that point, they had Joe Flacco at quarterback forever, and they still had very competitive, very good teams. So you have to think that other aspects of their team were pretty darn solid, and I think that's what you're seeing in a lot of these players that the Packers are interested in. So we love Zadarius. We're hoping Rick Wagner even comes close to that. Would be fantastic signing for the Packers. All right, so the other big name that they signed was a linebacker, which we knew they needed. And they made this decision. Again, it didn't look good for Blake Martinez coming back to the Packers as them heading into the offseason. That didn't look like it was going to be a possibility. I don't know if Martinez got an offer from the Packers at all, but he has officially signed with the Giants, and along with Kyler Fackrell as well, who signed with the Giants. So the Giants took a couple of former Packer linebackers. We love Blake Martinez. He's a great player. The Packers definitely needed an upgrade at that inside position, and he was going to become too expensive. So, Blake, we love you. Wish you well. Tackle everybody in New York. That's great. The one thing, though, for the Packers is they found a very interesting prospect, and they got him a little cheaper because he's had injury issues the last 2 years. But prior to that, Christian Kirksey was a really productive player. The 2 years he got to start in 2016 and 2017. He's faster than Martinez. Looking at some of his highlights and tape, it looks like he diagnoses things well and attacks, which was something that we always kind of saw a little bit lacking at times with other Packer inside linebackers for years and years and years, going back to A.J. Hawk, other guys they've plugged in there ever since, Desmond Bishop. It just hasn't quite been the same at the inside linebacker spots. And Kirksey is a really interesting guy to look at. He's a good athlete, got good speed. He's, again, a little later in his career. He's 30 years old as well. But still, if he can bounce back from those injuries, he could be a really great plug-in at inside backer and add that speed element that they really need.
Yeah. The other thing is he was drafted when Mike Pettin was the head coach of the Browns. So he's got familiarity with the system. So that's good news. So he can also be a leader right away when he walks in and kind of take over that mantle of a guy, like we always had. Blake Martinez was, he's the quarterback of the defense. He's the quarterback of the defense. Well, it's hard to get a guy that you sign him and have him come right in and be the quarterback of a defense when he's brand new to it. Well, Kirksey is a veteran who's been around a long time, and he started in this system under Pettin when he was his first couple of years in the league. So he already knows the system, and he can probably be that field general when the Packers need a field general right now, right from the start when they sign him. So it's not a super flashy pick. It's not a super it's not Littleton, like everybody wanted him to get Littleton, or maybe even Schobert, the other guy from the Browns. But to be honest, I actually like you said, I actually like Kirksey's signing better than either one of those two guys. Because I think Littleton was he was a numbers guy, like he always had a lot of numbers, but it didn't seem like the Rams defense really, he wasn't the guy making the stop or like really the difference maker on that defense. He had a lot of tackle. He's kind of like Blake Martinez, if you ask me. Maybe a little bit better coverage guy. So would you want to pay a whole bunch of money to get a guy who's pretty much Blake Martinez, maybe a little bit faster, but not quite the same type of general or knows what's going on? And maybe he doesn't quite have the IQ or the level of intelligence that Blake Martinez had. Where here you can get a guy right now who knows the system, knows what he's doing. He's a great guy in the community as far as we know. He's one of the Walter Payton Man of the Year guys. I think you brought that up. And so he kind of fits right in with this whole when the Packers sign a free agent, they're not going after the Antonio Brown type guys. They just don't. They go after guys who are, good guys, good teammates, good locker room guys, people that'll listen, they're coachable, and they do their job to the best of their ability for the most part. So that's a really good fit. And I'm excited because, if what you're saying is true, he seems to be a guy who can, diagnose plays and then attack the line of scrimmage and make the play. That's what I'm looking for. I don't want to see a guy who's hesitant anymore on defense. I want to see a guy play in that middle of the field who roams, who diagnoses the play and attacks, because we haven't had that since, like you said, Desmond Bishop used to do it and make some plays every now and again. And that's years and years ago. I mean, can't remember last time. That was when Brett Favre was a Viking, right? I can remember Desmond Bishop picking him off and running into the end zone.
Yeah, it was a while
So,
ago. They had good
a long
luck.
time ago.
And players that were 55 for the Packers have been pretty darn good over the years. But going back to one of my favorite guys, Bernardo Harris, and then Desmond Bishop, 55, and now Zadarius Smith, honoring that number quite well. The thing about Kirksey is he's not that big. Okay, we know that, but he's only 235 pounds. But the one thing that I noticed was, so I think that was one of the criticisms of him, is that he might have a hard time getting off blocks. But what I saw a lot in things I watched, and you look at the tackle numbers during his 2 seasons, 2016, 2017, where he started all 16 games, became a full-time starter, where he had 148 tackles in 2016, 138 tackles in 2017, was that he would beat the block. So he would recognize a run play and shoot through the line of scrimmage before those offensive linemen could come off the double team block and then get on the linebacker. And that's what you need. And that's what we lacked as Packers fans and as the Packers defense. And you saw it way too much in that last game against the 49ers. So we're hopeful that he can get back to that form. Now, he only played in 7 games in 2018 before an injury, and then only 2 games last year before another injury. So the injuries are a concern, right? I mean, that's a question mark. But you got to think if the guy has the right attitude, he can come back, get back into form, and it could be a huge add. And at only $8 million a year, if he ends up being a guy who then you can plug in, runs your defense, gets 150 tackles, I mean, that's a bargain. And he's got good speed to boot. 4.58, 40-yard dash time at the combine. The other thing, Ben, is he's an Iowa Hawkeye, and the Packers have had some pretty good luck with Iowa Hawkeyes in the past.
Yeah, we know that. Pretty much every guy they ever had at the Hawkeye, except for Balaga, was awesome.
That's true. Aaron Campman, Mike Daniels, Micah Hyde, all very good Hawkeyes and very good Packers. Balaga, okay. He always, in all of his introductions, it was always it almost sounded like a question mark. Brian Bulaga, Iowa? I don't know. Anyway.
I don't know. I don't think he wasn't even. He was never excited that much. I know. But we don't have to talk about him anymore. He is I think he's a Charger. So let him be a Charger. Right. That's the other thing. Okay, we talked about this before we recorded this, but I got to bring it up again. How in the world do the Chargers sign Brian Bulaga after that game that he played against the Chargers in L.A. this past year, when he got his butt kicked over and over, and the whole offensive line, not just Bulaga, but the whole offensive line, where Joey Bosa and Ingram just destroyed them over and over and over. I mean, it was pathetic. And the Chargers signed him? Like, do they know what's going on? Did they not watch what he did? Like, I don't get it. There's only one move this offseason that's more stupid than that. And I think you should bring it up right now.
We will. There are other curious moves by Packer opponents, including the one and only Chicago Bears, who continue to baffle, I think, everyone with some of the things they do. They had a 12-4 season 2 years ago. They go down to 8-8 last year, and now they're going to improve, Ben, because they got the one and only Jimmy Graham for a 2-year contract for $16 million for Jimmy Graham when they just signed Trey Burton a couple of years ago to be their starting tight end. It's a head scratcher. I don't get it.
It doesn't make any sense. To be honest, if I was a Bears fan, I would storm wherever the Bears headquarters is, and I'd be like, fire this guy. Whoever this general manager guy is for the Bears is the dumbest guy in the history of dumb guys. I mean, ever since he made that trade to move up one spot with the 49ers, they gave up like three picks and like the first round pick the next year and all this crazy stuff to move up one spot to get a guy that the 49ers they didn't even want. Like the 49ers just called him and said, hey, we're going to take your quarterback, or somebody's trying to trade up to get this quarterback. You might want to trade with us. And then they bought that crap that somebody's going to try to trade the number 2 to get Mitch Trubisky. Nobody wanted him. Nobody even heard of him. And they gave up all that stuff to move up one spot to get Mitch Trubisky, who obviously stinks. And then they signed HaHa last year, thinking he was good. And now they signed Jimmy Graham. And then they trade for Nick Foles. Nick Foles is going to be your answer if Mr. Trubisky sucks. All I know is this. I'm so glad. Actually, I mean, as a Packer fan, I'm glad that guy's the general manager of the Bears because he's a moron. He's an idiot. I'm just so glad. I can't get over how dumb they are. Every move they make is like the dumbest move. The dumbest move ever. Except for the Khalil Mack. That was a good move. But everything else?
But an expensive
dumb.
One. That was an expensive one.
Yeah, it was expensive, right. They had to give up a couple picks, and they had to sign him to a big, long contract. So, and the weirdest part is they've got good guys on their team, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like Hicks, that their defensive tackle Hicks is like amazing. Like I wish he was a Packer to be honest. That guy is freaking crazy.
Yeah.
But it's like, I don't know if that was them drafting him or they just got lucky with him or what. But I mean, every other thing they do makes 0 sense most of the time. And that's why it's so great that they're in the same division as the Packers. So I'm cool with that. The other one is the Vikings traded away Diggs and got pretty good. They got like a bunch of picks for him, which is actually a pretty smart move too, because Diggs is kind of like an Antonio Brown kind of guy where he's really diverse in the locker room. You either love him or you hate him. And I think he might have been causing some rifts in with Kirk Cousins' development with that team and being the leader that he needs to be and all that kind of stuff. So the Vikings are making good moves. The Bears, like usual, are making dumb moves. The Lions aren't really doing anything. They traded away Slay, their best corner, because they didn't want to sign it. They didn't want to give him any money, so they traded him to Eagles or something like that. And then they let us get this Wagner guy. So hey, we'll take him. I don't know what the Lions are doing, but anyways, all those things that happen are, the Packers aren't making flashy moves, right? They're not. They did it last year. They can't do it this year. But what they're doing is they're building a roster. They're solidifying positions that they're weak at this point in free agency, so that when the draft comes, because when you get down to pick 30, there's probably not a difference maker there, right? There might be, but there probably isn't. But they're prepared where, okay, there's 4 spots we need, right? Inside linebacker, wide receiver, offensive line, either a tackle or a guard, whatever, or some kind of defensive lineman of some type, whether it's a defensive end or defensive tackle. They could take the best guy available at 30 out of those 4 spots because they have all those spots now covered in some way with a veteran who can come in and play those positions. So it's not like super exciting this year like it was last year where they signed all those guys and everybody was going crazy. But you got to remember those guys that they signed last year are still on the team. And we know that they're all good except for Billy Turner. But the other 3 are good. So, those are things that are exciting as a Packer fan, and we should all be excited. We should all be excited that, they went after a couple guys. They're making smart moves. The only thing we can hope is that they don't blow it like they did last year with their number 1 pick last year, because obviously Gary is just whatever. But now with Fackrell, like we said, when we did our keep him or let him go thing, we said we got to let Fackrell go because that's going to force Pettin to play Gary. Gary needs to play. If he's going to be a number 12 pick overall and make a difference, Fackrell has to be gone. And now it's him. It's going to be the 2 Smiths and Gary. Those 3 guys are going to have to make plays, and they're going to have no choice but to play them now. So that's another thing that letting Fackrell go is helping.
And
I
that,
don't know what else.
That
what
also
else you want to talk about. But.
Well, it also means looking at the draft and look at, like we said. So Mercedes Lewis is back. That's a good thing. Yay!
Yeah.
You pair him, you bring him back in with your tight ends of the future that you need to be what you want them, expected them to be, which are of course Bob Tonyan and then Jay Sternberger, who really came on as the year went on. And you invested a 3rd round pick in Sternberger. Tonyan's shown he's young and he's shown flashes. Lewis is a guy that can still be effective, but show those guys the ropes and really mentor them, and he's happy to do it. So that tight end group is great. You do not need to reach for a tight end. You don't need to spend a bunch of money in free agency for a tight end. You're good there. But what this move does is exactly what you said, exactly what we're talking about. Gary now has to be on the field, and you're going to see what you have. And it also means, now, one other thing about this upcoming draft is it's also pretty deep with edge rushers. So deep in wide receiver, deep with edge rushers. And it also means then that you do not think about an edge rusher at pick 30 or your 1st round pick.
No.
right? Because you've got.
I don't care if the best. I
Right.
don't care if a top 10 talent is at 30 and he's an edge rusher. Do not take him. You screwed up last year by signing 2 awesome guys and then drafting an edge rusher when you needed other positions, like offensive line could have helped. If they do it again, I'm going to blow my mind because there's 4 spots they need.
Yeah.
They need, especially defensive line and linebacker. Because, yeah, they did sign Kirksey, but he's got an injury history. He's only there for 2 years. They need a guy to be the guy, okay? You let Martinez go. All you got is a question mark with Summers, or what was his name? Summers?
Yeah, Ty Summers, Bolton, who's another
and then,
undrafted guy, and then your
and
third round pick, Burks, who is you don't even let him see the field.
Who knows what he is?
Well, they're obviously not happy with what they've seen from him because he can't even get on the field. Okay, like
it's just the weirdest thing. I don't get Pettin. Like I don't understand. Like he never plays these guys. Same thing with
Jackson
on cornerback. Like, is he that bad?
They must be
compared to Kevin King. Like, is he just like he's got to be just in the doghouse. Like he gets 0 playing time.
I don't.
You know what I mean?
I don't have an answer other than that is what the Packers are clearly communicating to everyone is that they do not trust those guys. You don't invest a 2nd-round pick and a 3rd-round pick in players that by their 2nd year aren't even seeing the field. Even when you have injuries, they can't see the field. I mean, that tells me that you do not believe in those players whatsoever. The coaching staff does not believe in those players, and so they're not really any good.
About that.
It's crazy,
Dude,
right?
Think about that. Out of the top 3 picks from 2 years ago, right? Only one guy's playing. That's Jair Alexander. Out of the top 3 picks last year, 2 of them played. Savage was great in the beginning, then he got hurt, and then he kind of stunk after that. But Gary didn't play at all. The only ones they've only hit on 1 out of those 2, which is, it's supposed to, I guess, if you're batting, 300, whatever, 333, that's pretty good batting average, especially when it comes to picks and stuff and that sort of thing. But not a high pick like that, like the first 2 rounds of the draft, or even the 3rd round with Owen Burks. Like these guys need to be playing. Like they can't develop if they're not playing. Practice can only do so much.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, and we watched them play. We watched the defense. It wasn't that great.
Yeah.
You can't tell me that Owen Burks was that much of a drop off, and Jackson was that much of a drop off from Kevin King. Because Kevin King was not the greatest either. He was okay, but he wasn't great. And even Jair had a couple, brain farts every now and again. Like I said, the only guy I liked was Tremont, who I don't know if he's coming back, and luckily Chan Sullivan, who they signed back. So that's great. I like Chan Sullivan. He's one of my favorite guys. So, but it's one of those weird things where I don't know. Like I'm happy with what Gutekunst is doing. It seems like he's making the right moves. And then when you kind of look back and you're like, wait a minute, none of these guys are being played. Like, why are they not being played?
Mm-hmm.
And it's just it's really odd to me. And then you think of the whole 3 wide receivers at the end of the draft, right?
Right.
Really, none of them are panned out.
No.
None of them are panned out to the point where now we have to try to get a receiver out of this draft. And it's like, he took 3 of them. One of them stunk so bad he couldn't make the team last year.
Yeah.
The other one got the dropsies every now and again, and the other guy got hurt and was out all year. So I don't know. I mean, but we can have a whole draft discussion some other time. But those are just the hit points. Like I just said too, I'm excited because all the restricted free agents, they signed them all back this last couple of days here. So Lazard's back, Kumero's back, both receivers. Lancaster at defensive line is back, who, like I said, we all wanted all these guys to come back. Sullivan's back. He's my new favorite player. And Tanyan's back, who's a solid up-and-coming speed receiving type tight end. Boom. Those are all awesome guys. They solidified the tight end room, solidified, right? Wide receivers, backup receivers are good. To be honest with you, if they draft a receiver, I kind of want it to be the first round. I kind of want it to be some kind of speed playmaker guy, whoever that is.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know if I want to see another 5th round draft pick unless it's, I mean, if you want to go there, I've gone through a couple things when it comes to these receivers, but a lot of the guys I've looked at are like late round picks. is what they're projected to be. So I don't know if you want me to go over a couple of these names, but that's up to you, I guess. But those are guys that I'm seeing that the Packers could probably draft. Because the other thing, they have not signed back Irvin yet.
Right.
So they're probably going to need to get somebody in the late rounds who's, a return type guy, because they can't go without a returner again. Because last year they had negative 10 yards return or whatever after 10 weeks or whatever. Negative 1 return yards after 10 weeks. It was pathetic.
Right. Well, let's finish on the free agency stuff. And I wanted to say a couple of other cool things about Kirksey, because you mentioned the Walter Payton Man of the Year candidate for the Browns in 2018. He was, and the other thing is, what's interesting about him is that he's been a captain everywhere he's been. So in high school, in Iowa, he was voted team captain for the Browns at only 25 years old. He was voted team captain. And the guy has done a bunch of charitable work, not just in one area. You see a lot of these guys will maybe create their own camp, stuff like that. But he spent time with Camp Courageous, which aims to foster independence and better the quality of life for children and adults with developmental disabilities through outdoor activities. He also hosted things relating to Cleveland family adoption and backpack giveaways. I mean, the guy just seems like a really, really good guy for your community as well. And good guys often are also hard workers, and that's what I think we're going to see from Kirksey. The other thing is that he was only 17 years old when his father passed away, and he was the youngest of 7 kids. So the youngest of 7 kids, you're 17, your dad passes away, and you still excel through college and make the NFL and do what he's done to this point. So I think, it's a really interesting story as well, as a good player, but a really good person on the team. And I love the trend. Hey, personally, as a Packers fan, I just like it when we have good people as well, because I don't want to see like the Antonio Brown saga. I don't want to see some of these other guys that you see around the league that are just big problems, Odell Beckham Jr. and stuff like that. I don't want that on the Packers. So I'm glad they stay away from those guys. One other weird thing about Kirksey, maybe not everybody knows this. I guess it's pretty famous. I didn't realize it. I don't know if you know this. But in the Madden 15 video game, he went viral because he was accidentally placed on the Tennessee Titans, even though he was on the Browns. And when he was in the game, he measured 1 foot 2 inches tall on the screen.
What?
It's a weird. Yeah, I'm telling you. I was like, what the heck is this? And then it went viral, and he became super. Like, he's a new player to the league. He's not even starting, but they screwed this glitch up in the game where they put him on the wrong team, and everyone else was like the size of normal players on the Madden screen, and he was 14 inches tall on the Madden screen in the game in Madden 15. And so he got all this publicity from that, like here he's a young guy, nobody knows who he is, but because of this glitch in Madden, all of a sudden people know his name and know who he is, and he did like this promotional thing afterwards about it and all this sort of stuff, and so it was super funny. So yeah, I wasn't playing Madden in that time frame, still am not, because I've gotten away from it, but that was a pretty wild and cool thing. So anyway, weird. Yeah,
that's weird, man.
Weird glitch, but that's one of the things he's famous for. So, Christian Kirksey, welcome to the Packers. We love it. Here, a couple other things. Now, you mentioned those guys they signed back, which is awesome. Lazard, Kumaro, Lancaster, Irvin, and of course, or not Irvin yet, but we hope Irvin. But of course, Shannon Sullivan was a must-have the way he played. And that also means that the Packers are probably looking at what are they going to do with the other free agency pieces. And one of those is being Tramon Williams, who we love. And Tramon is one of our favorite Packers of all time. But I don't know if it's like we said before. If you bring him back, then he's going to be on the field probably, right? And if he's on the field, you don't know what you have with some of these young guys. So it's really a tough call there on Tramon. I think it's basically going to be based on his price that he wants. And if he comes back on a really cheap deal, they'd probably take him, obviously, because of his leadership and because he can mentor these guys and teach all the young guys a bunch of stuff. But that's a question mark. The linebacker that there's been rumors about is Patrick Onwuasor, and he played for the Ravens. His first 4 years were in Baltimore. He wasn't a full-time starter. He's got 234 tackles over the 4 years, 9.5 sacks. He would be, again, another good fit for the defense because of the style of defense being similar. And right now his projection is maybe like a $4.5 million average annual salary. So a pretty inexpensive veteran linebacker that's got some experience in the defense potentially there that they could, again, steal from the Ravens. Because right now, again, it's Ty Summers, Oren Burks, or Bolton, who two undrafted guys and your third-round pick that's not really working out for you. So that's a guy that there's rumors about. Snacks Harrison is another Lion that the Packers have shown interest in. And, hey, you want a run stopper, that guy's a monster. He's a big guy.
Yeah, that would be good. A lot of people have been talking about him. There's been a lot of different Packer websites and Packer other guys that do content, and they're talking about Snacks Harrison, and I mean, it's one of those things where they need to get at least one, if not two, defensive linemen free agent signed, because they need some veterans. I mean, we went over this last time, or maybe it was 2 times ago. You talked about Ryan Pickett and Howard Green, right? And guys like that who were, not flashy names. Everybody knew who they were, but they came in and they did their job. They solidified the defensive line. They were part of the rotation. So, I mean, it gives Kenny Clark the option of actually being fully rested most of the time when he's out there, so he can be at his top potential instead of playing more downs than any other player of the defensive line and being tired half the time. We just need another guy who's solid and knows what's going on. And we talked about it last time about, maybe it was a big mistake letting Mike Daniels go. And after we said that, it made me think about Tramon Williams too. Maybe it would be a mistake not to sign him back. Yeah, it's going to hold back some guys from playing, but we watched how they let Mike Daniels go because they're like, oh, we got young guys that are ready to go with Kiki and Adams. Well, they weren't ready to go. And because Daniels wasn't there, their defensive line suffered. So do we want to let the young guys play in hopes that they're good enough? Or do we want Sherman, who we know is a solid veteran, who, he doesn't want to tackle anybody, but he can cover and he can get interceptions. So,
it's a fair point. He had the 7th best Pro Football Focus grade for coverage grade among all corners last season. So, I mean, I don't look at every play like those people do and rate him, but I guess he was doing a good job in coverage. Again, maybe not the tackling, but the coverage part. But Snacks Harrison, I mean, he started 62 of his 64 games for the Lions. So he's a durable guy, eats up blocks. You need a guy who's going to eat up blockers to keep your linebackers free, right? And that's how that could work together with a guy like Kirksey with more speed and all that stuff. And I mean, come on. You want to have a guy named Snacks on your Packers team?
Yeah.
Come on, right?
You have to.
That's
just
awesome.
Like when we had Gilbert Brown, who was the grave digger. You had B.J. Raji, who wasn't the greatest, but everybody seemed to think he was because he called himself the Freezer or whatever he was. You just need a guy with a cool nickname on your defensive line. Kenny Clark doesn't have a cool nickname, but if you had a guy named Snacks, that's another cool nickname on your defensive line, which makes all Packer fans happy.
We like him. They would totally embrace him. Packer Nation would totally embrace him. One other guy that's out there that could be an interesting receiver ad, especially with the, that you mentioned all those receivers drafted and how they haven't really worked out. 3 receivers in consecutive picks and rounds and all that stuff with St. Brown and MVS and Jamon Moore. I went in reverse order there. But those 3 picks not really being all that productive. Was Tajay Sharp, who is now a free agent from Tennessee. First 4 years were in Tennessee. He had a really solid rookie year in playing with Marcus Mariota as his quarterback, I might add. He had over 522 yards, 41 receptions, and then some things kind of went down. Now, he's 6'2". He's a little on the light side. He's about 198 pounds, somewhere in that neck of the woods, 195 pounds. So he's not big, but he's big enough, and he's been solid and a good pass catcher, and he's only 25 years old. So depending on, if there's any more depth need to be added, or a guy who could then push Lazard or push some of those other guys for potential playing time and keep them on their toes, that might be a nice add in free agency, and he probably wouldn't be that expensive. However, like you said, I agree. Sorry, Nick, we got to agree on this one. But the Packers need top-end talent at wide receiver. They have not had top-end talent in a long time. They very rarely have invested in high picks, and that's where the talented players are. I'm sorry. Like, it's nice to try to find little gems in the rough, but at a position like receiver, it's really difficult to do that in late rounds. A lot of times, you might find some other guys, like linemen, maybe that don't have to be as athletic to be good football players that you can find in later rounds. But receiver, man, the numbers don't lie. Receivers that are drafted high usually perform much better than receivers that are drafted low.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, and with this draft, there's so many guys that are listed to be potential superstar receivers that one of them is going to be there at 30. A lot of people are saying this Mims guy is going to be there. I don't know, much about it or whatever, but it's one of those things where I actually don't want him to sign a free agent wide receiver. I just don't. I want him to draft two guys this year, one of them high and one of them late, and have the guy late be. There's a couple, like I said, there's 5 guys I've targeted that I think are going to be there in the 4th, 5th, 6th round, somewhere in there, that are really good players. Some of them remind me of like a James Jones type. Some remind me of like a Randall Cobb, Donald Driver type. And they're guys, that's what they need. They need one guy like that, and then one guy who's either going to take over the defense, or take over, speed beers, big time guy who makes plays to go along with Devontae. Because as much as people don't want to admit it, Greg Jennings was a 2nd round pick, and he was a dominant player. He got open a lot. Jordy Nelson, 2nd round pick, great player. He might not have always gotten open, but he knew how to adjust his body, and Rodgers knew where to throw the ball. Those guys had like a wavelength that was perfect. And Devontae was a 2nd round pick, who took him a couple years to develop, but now he's a superstar. Those guys weren't late round picks at wide receiver. They're 2nd round picks. Yeah, Donald Driver was a 7th round pick or whatever he was.
Only because he went to
never saw playing time.
Tiny school. That's why, it's like
right.
He was undetected.
Yeah, even Randall Cobb was a 2nd round pick.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like, and he was a very good player for quite a few years at the Packers. So as much as it's great that they drafted those 3 guys in the late round, there's a reason why those guys all fell down. Now, out of those 3 guys, I do think St. Brown actually could be something. Like, if he can stay healthy. He's got probably the best hands. He's fast. He's tall. Like, to be honest, I wouldn't be surprised if MVS is off the team by this time next year.
Yeah, think about that.
Before, even if he makes a team. Because
think about that. Think about the turnaround for him. I mean, he was going into last year's camp as the clear-cut number 2 wide receiver, right? And now we're talking about him maybe not making the team. Man, wow.
Well, I mean, it's the other good news. Gmo's gone, and hopefully they don't sign him back. Good God, I hope not. But
he's just too slow.
They got Lazard. They got Lazard and Kumerow for at least one more year. St. Brown coming back. Devontae. That's 4 guys right there. I think they need to draft 2 guys. They need to draft one receiver at either the 1st round or 2nd round pick, and then get another one with the late round pick. And don't sign Gmo back. Give MVS a shot, but I'm telling you, I don't know if I could trust him. And they'll have a good receiving core. The biggest thing we saw last year was guys either weren't getting open at times, or Rodgers wasn't. I don't know what he was doing a couple times. I don't even want to get into that right now. But so I don't know. But I don't know about signing free agent receivers. I don't want to see that. I just don't want to. I'm done. I don't want to see free agent receivers. I just don't.
There's a lot of them that don't pan out. I mean, I will say this. Think about where the Packers would be at receiver right now if they'd never discovered Allen Lazard. I mean,
Well, they'd have nothing.
It would be looking really bleak right now, right? And so I will say this for whoever made the call on Lazard, whoever said, "Hey, we got to get this guy," that person needs a raise. That person needs a big raise. Whoever that
Same
was.
thing. Whoever found Shandon Sullivan, that guy needs a raise too.
Exactly. Like those guys are. I mean, those guys were castaways from other teams. I mean, man, it's incredible. It's incredible how important they have become to the Packers' depth and their overall team on both offense and defense. Because without those two, both of those units, the defensive backs and the wide receivers, would look very different.
Yeah, I mean, they would have fell apart, to be honest. And they almost did. They almost did fall apart last year at the end of the year. And if it wasn't for the Rodgers saying get Lazard in the game against Detroit, we would have never known. And then Sullivan, like I said, last time he made $1 million, like not $1 million, but I mean, it seemed like every time at the end of the game when the Packers had a lead and they had to come up with a stop somehow, Sullivan was the guy breaking up the pass on 3rd down and 4th down. Like it was crazy how many plays he made. And you just can't teach that sometimes, you know? It's like we said, it's the Micah Hyde thing. It's just a guy who knows how to play football. And those are the kind of guys we got to hang on to, and I'm glad they're back. Who's the other guy that's back? Oh yeah, Mason Crosby. That happened a long time ago, but he's back. Which is fine with me. Like I said, we said the last time we were going over should we keep him or not, and it's like, well, half the dang kickers can't even make extra points anymore. So yeah, we need him because he can actually do that and kick in Lambeau and all that kind of stuff. So it's a good move. It's a smart move. And eventually someday he's gonna not be able to kick anymore, so they got to figure something else. But right now, let's stick with him.
Yeah, we said this before too. There have been a lot of teams that have moved on from their veteran kickers and then are still looking for a kicker 5 years later.
The Bears.
Yeah.
The Bears.
A lot.
We've already gone over how dumb the Bears are, but that was another. The Bears.
Yeah. And again, Mason, same thing. Great guy. Outstanding guy in the community, great teammate. I mean, hey, not everybody would have agreed to do what he did after he had that really rough season, to take a pay cut and build in incentives to earn his salary back. So he had to perform in order to earn his salary back. Not everybody would have done that. Not everybody would have handled that situation as well as he did. That's the character of the guy. I mean, he just had his best year ever kicking. I mean, no, so that, yes, does he cost a fair penny? Yes. But guess what? We talked about this too. How many close games the Packers played? How many close games all these teams play? A lot of times it's going to come down to a made or miss kick for a win or loss. So give me that guy. He's worth it. One other thing, the Packers just signed Will Redmond as well.
Yep. And he was kind of
okay.
When we did our free agents thing, I was like, I kind of was like, let him go. But I understand why they signed him back, because really they have Savage and Amos, and that's it. So they really need to get some more safeties, and because Campbell is a free agent and Sullivan they played him at dime back. They kind of played him at safety sometimes, and they played him at corner sometimes. So he's sort of like a safety, but not really. So it's just Redmond. It seemed to me like every time there's a big play in the last 2 years, Redmond was there to make the play, and he didn't make it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I would agree.
Like that. And this is 2 years ago, I know, but like the play where the week 2 against the Vikings, where Kirk Cousins threw a deep pass that ended up like falling to oh crap, I can't remember the Thielen. Adam Thielen was like sitting down practically. Mm-hmm. He fell down on his butt and caught it sitting down. And when you watch that playback, Redmond's right there, and instead of looking for the ball, he's looking at Thielen and trying not to hit him instead of playing the ball. He could have picked that off, and that would have not ended up in a tie, because that ended up going to overtime and ended up being a tie. At that point, Jair Alexander had just gotten a pick or something, and then they had the lame call on Clay Matthews and all that stuff. But it's like that was one play, and there's other times too where when he plays back safety, sometimes he's not reading the play. He's not reading the ball. He's looking at the receiver too much. And it's just, if you're playing safety, you're playing a zone, you're not supposed to be looking for the receivers. You'll keep them in like your peripheral, but you're watching the quarterback to see what's going to happen with that ball. So he should have known where that ball was, and he took his eye off the ball and looking for Thielen. And I know these defenders have to worry about not hitting the receiver early or not hitting them too high and not doing all this kind of stuff, and I get it. But I don't think he has the awareness to be a top-notch safety, to be honest.
No.
So I don't know if he's not a great, I mean, okay, special teams player, baby. But, if he makes a team later on this year, that just means they didn't draft anybody or they didn't sign any undrafted free agent, from this year that beat him out, because I don't think he is a top, or even, I don't even think he's a starter in the NFL, is what I'm trying to say.
No.
To be quite honest.
I got you. Yeah. He's a depth guy. Also, he's not terribly big. I mean, we talked about, they played Sullivan at safety sometimes, and he's not big. Redmond's only 5'11", 186 pounds, so that's a pretty small safety, but he's not fast enough to be corner, so I guess he's a safety by default. And then the other part there is that, he's a depth guy. He's a guy that at least is familiar with the system, has been pretty solid on special teams, so that's his role. The terms of the contract we don't see here yet, but so you're guessing they got him pretty cheap would be the thought. And if you get depth in a special teams starter, okay, that's fine. We'll say that.
Yeah, and you need those guys.
Yeah.
I'm not saying like, hey, it's a bad pickup. I'm just saying, if it's another one of those type of things where they signed him just in case they don't draft a guy or get an undrafted free agent rookie this year who can push them. You know what I mean? If they can't find a guy, well, okay, we got a guy who we know knows the system. We know he can come in and play. Will he do the right thing all the time? Maybe, maybe not. So whatever. I mean, I think out of the two between Campbell and him, I really wanted to sign Campbell back, but Campbell might be a higher price, maybe there's other teams looking at him too. So I don't know. That's one of those things where it's interesting to see what happens with Campbell. But out of the rest of the free agents the Packers have, really it's Campbell, Irvin, and then whether they bring back Williams. Those are the only three guys I'd rather see come back to us that haven't already signed with somebody.
Yeah, so I would say so far so good for the Packers in the early days of free agency. I'm excited for the draft. Once we get closer to that time, we get through the draft, we'll come back and do another episode. But I think that's all we got for today for this one. Hopefully you enjoyed the time away from all the coronavirus talk and all of that stuff. Now, obviously, it's a very serious situation. Take it seriously, please. However, take opportunities like this to step away from it when you can, and tell more people about Hafeman Brothers Talking Packers if they're looking for a distraction or something else to do other than listen and talk and read stuff about coronavirus. How's that?
Yeah, I've watched way too many videos about coronavirus the last couple of days, to be honest.
So
even Olivia's like, we got to watch another one of these. I'm like, well, I want to see if something new comes up or whatever. I want to know what's going on.
It is a very.
The other part is we don't have local TV, so it's really tough because
oh yeah.
Usually you get the local television. They're like, oh, we got this many cases. You can go here and go that. And, so I don't really know what's going on that way. Luckily, Jesse's parents live in town here, so they kind of tell us what's going on. But otherwise, I'm just kind of watching the national news. And just like national sports coverage, they don't really know what's going on in the actual, community here. They just kind of do like this big thing as if it's like this huge monstrous thing.
Yeah.
Yep. So they don't really, they have the information and it's good, but it's not necessarily relevant to me at this point yet.
Right. Right.
So,
but anyway, I mean, hey, just to balance ourselves out and our sanity, take opportunities to step away from it, but we do say take it seriously. And maybe, like I said, hey, if one of those opportunities to step away is to check out Hafeman Brothers Talking Packers, we got episodes from all last year. If you want to relive any of the excitement of the 2019 season, there's a lot of good moments, even a few good moments on our podcast. So you can find that on YouTube. Subscribe, like, comment, let us know.
Oh, wait.
What else you got?
I got to say one thing.
Okay.
Hey, I was wrong about I said the Packers made the playoffs every year Mike Holmgren was their head coach. They did not make the playoffs the first year he was head coach.
All right, 6 out of 7, though, is pretty good.
I was wrong about that. I just wanted to make sure because...
What? Hey, nobody does that. You know how many times Colin Cowherd's wrong and all these other clowns are wrong? They never go back and and say they were wrong?
I was also wrong about Tom Brady. I said 2 months ago that Tom Brady was going to go to the 49ers, and he went to Tampa Bay. So,
Yeah.
but I think that the only reason why he didn't go is because the 49ers were too wussy to actually sign him and cut Jimmy Garoppolo. Because if they had the guts to do it, it would have been the smartest move they ever made. But obviously, they don't have the guts to do it.
It would have been smarter for him too, because he would have had a lot more time to throw the ball. Because in Tampa Bay, he's not going to have that much time like he did in New England. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I don't know what's going to happen.
Their line's not that great. The 49ers line is pretty darn good. Plus, you get all the play action and all the extra time because of that. So that might have been a good move for him. Well, anyway, if you want still some Packer fix business, now this is for you if you kind of tuned out, if you did the season, you're like, okay, I'm checking out for a while. And now there's no sports going on. We don't get to watch the Bucs anymore, who are doing awesome. We don't get all this stuff, okay, because of everything. The Packers have put some pretty cool stuff out recently, including a lot of really fun alumni spotlights. So interviews with some cooler older players. One of my favorites, Scotty Wells, is in there. John Yurkovich.
Yep.
Like, come on, man. Those are golden.
Bernardo has a good one.
Bernardo
Harris.
I didn't check out
watched,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
I just watched Brian Grant today.
Oh, I was going to say I hadn't seen that one yet.
You know who surprised me was Niall Diggs. I remember him as a player, but I didn't think I thought he was just a guy. I don't know. And he was very super intelligent and very charismatic. And
if you're as old as us, you might remember John Anderson. He's in there too.
Oh yeah, John Anderson. He was awesome.
But Scotty Wells is one of my favorite guys. His story's awesome, too. I didn't realize he was, again, undrafted, cut, barely made the team. I mean, he talks about all that stuff. And then he turned out to be a great center. Like, he was awesome. I don't think people really appreciate how good Scott Wells was until he was gone, because he was awesome.
He was the glue that held that offense together in 2010 when they had all those injuries and all kinds of weird stuff going on the team. And I can remember the day after they won the Super Bowl, he did a huge interview on ESPN the next day, like standing outside the hotel. I watched it. It was like half an hour. It was funny. He's just such a crazy guy.
Yeah, he's awesome. He's one of my favorite offensive linemen for the Packers ever, because I just thought he was a great player and highly underrated and a great guy. So gotta love him. So check it out if you're looking. If you need something. Hey, go check out the Packers website. They got a lot of cool alumni spotlight stuff, and learn more about who those guys were as people, as well as their memories of their time in Green Bay, because it was pretty cool stuff. So Scotty Wells, if you can find the one for Yurko was a fan fave as well, of course, because how could you not love John Yurkovich, man? How could you not?
It's impossible. He was the man. I'll never forget when he got hurt by the Cowboys in that playoff game, and he was yelling and screaming at him, and then Reggie got all mad and was yelling and screaming at him.
Yep.
That was a great game.
Yeah.
Oh, it sucked because they lost, but I mean, Yurko was calling him cheap and all kinds of words that I can't say on this podcast. But yeah, Yurko was the man.
His interview.
Y'all know
his interview on. Oh, go ahead. I just wanted to say something, but go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say that's the one jersey that our mom ever bought for herself.
Right.
Remember? She bought the Yurko jersey, and then when he wasn't there anymore, then it was Bruce Wilkerson.
Yeah, yep.
And she's like, well, I guess it's a Wilkerson jersey now. He's 64.
The one thing I love about Yurko's story, too, is he just comes out and talks about, because he did not look like a football player. You know? He's had, like, flabby arms and a big gut and was more pear-shaped than anything else. And he talked about how that was something that the coaching staff at the time dismissed him and wasn't interested in him, because they looked at his body index and all that stuff. We're like, no, we can't have this guy. And then they went back and reevaluated his play, and we're like, oh, okay, maybe he can play football, but he doesn't look like he should be able to. And I thought that was super funny. So he tells it better than I did, so you really got to find that one and check it out. Anyway.
Yeah, it's fun. Yeah, I remember I watched it.
Check out the Packers alumni spotlights. They're awesome. That'll buy some time as well and give you a distraction. All right, thanks for checking us out. Hafeman Brothers Talking Packers. For Brother Ben, we'll catch you again after the draft. Do you want to do something before the draft or just after the draft?
Well, we could do something before, talking about what they might do and that kind of thing. Like I said, I got 5 guys I think they can get
Ooh, okay. All right.
later on at wide receiver, but we'll see.
Well, and I'll tell you what, if these things continue, quarantines and whatnot, shutdown and stuff like that, you
might
might
not be a draft.
Well, that too. I was just thinking you might hear from us more often because we'll be like, well, we got to do something because we're bored. But I don't know, maybe. Right?
Yeah. Well, like you said, I got to write some songs, or I've written a song.
You
in
do have to
3
write
years,
some songs.
So.
You do.
Yeah, I know.
And I got to do something also productive in addition to this. Not that this is not productive, because it's fun and it's good for me, and hopefully it's good for you. Thanks for listening, everybody. Thanks for checking out Hafeman Brothers Talking Packers. Spread the word about it, please, because we had a good first year, and we're hoping to continue, and we hope more people check it out, because maybe we're a little biased. Maybe our mom is biased, but she thinks it's one of the best Packer shows out there. That's what she says. And our mom doesn't lie.
She doesn't.
Very
That's
true.
why you can never play games with her.
That's true. All your deception games where you got to try to trick people and stuff, she's terrible at them. Terrible.
Yeah, she always tells the truth, so you always know what's going on with her. So it's like, that's the way it is.
All right. We'll give you some of our flair at the end of this show. Thanks for checking it out, everybody. We'll catch you soon.